This could be the most important archaeological find of the century, because by using modern technology, researchers may finally have found the lost labyrinth of ancient Egypt. However, it's not been easy going, and there's certainly some resistance to these claims. So let's study the evidence and see if one of the greatest mysteries of ancient history is about to be solved. Hi guys, welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Michael. I have a degree in ancient history, and on this channel, we discuss the unexplainable mysteries of our past. Let's get into it. The lost labyrinth of ancient Egypt has long been one of antiquity's most stubborn contradictions, loudly attested by the ancients but not visible to us today. For over 2 millennia, travelers and scholars swore there was a monstrous complex beneath Hawara, yet now we have nothing. So either the ancients were prone to spectacular exaggeration, or a colossal architectural achievement still sleeps hidden beneath the sand. Herodotus is our first great witness. Writing in the 5th century BC, he claims he saw the labyrinth himself and found it, quote, greater than words can say. This is the man who had already marveled at Thebes and the pyramids, yet he insists the labyrinth surpassed all the great works produced by the Greeks, which were inferior in labour and expense to this labyrinth. He goes on to attest that the labyrinth surpasses even the pyramids in grandeur. Now just imagine that, an ancient construction that is not just equal to, but surpasses the incredible and astounding achievements of the Giza pyramids, still waiting to be discovered. In his histories, Herodotus writes of a structure with 12 covered courts and 3,000 interconnected rooms. He admits he wasn't allowed into the lower level, but that priests told him those held vast subterranean halls. Above ground, he describes white stone columns perfectly fitted, carved walls, and a stone roof to match. He then adds a vital clue. At a corner of the labyrinth stood a pyramid, connected by an underground passage. But Herodotus was not alone. A few centuries later, around 25 BC, the geographer Strabo also described the Egyptian labyrinth. He echoed Herodotus' amazement, calling it a work equal to the pyramids. He observed how bewildering the layout was, noting, before the entrances there lie hidden chambers, with paths running through one another, which twist and turn, so that no one can enter or leave any court without a guide. Even in ruin, the maze-like design was evident. Diodorus Siculus backs this up. He says that the famous Cretan maze of King Minos was a mere imitation, inspired by Egypt's original. By Diodorus' day, the Cretan copy had vanished, but the older Egyptian labyrinth, he says, remained absolutely perfect. Meanwhile, the Roman author Pliny the Elder also mentions the labyrinth in his natural history. Pliny, however, notes the astonishing claim that it was constructed over 3,600 years before his time, which would push its origin to before dynastic Egypt arose. He marvels that even the wear of ages and vandalism had been unable to obliterate the labyrinth's vast stonework, a testament to its solid construction. So from these ancient testimonies, a picture emerges of an extraordinary underground complex. All the accounts agree on its grand scale, countless chambers and perplexing layouts, yet who built it and why remained a mystery. So the question is brutally simple. Were generations of Greek and Roman writers collectively hallucinating, or is a vast, precision-built complex still down there, exactly where they said it would be? Fast forward to the 18th and 19th centuries, when European explorers began probing Egypt's ancient sites. In 1799, Napoleon Bonaparte's invasion of Egypt brought along a team of scholars and engineers who investigated the Hawara area in detail. In the massive Description de l'Egypte, published in 1821, they identified ruins beside the pyramid of Amenemhat III and argued these were the remains of the legendary labyrinth. This was essentially the first modern identification of the labyrinth's location. As the 1800s progressed, adventurous archaeologists continued to make pilgrimages to Hawara to see what could be found. In 1843, British explorers Sir John Gardiner Wilkinson and Sir Howard Vyse both visited and reported that extensive brick ruins south of the pyramid might be part of the labyrinth's remains. Around the same time, Carl Richard Lepsius, a prominent Prussian Egyptologist, uncovered a series of mysterious brick chambers and walls. He became convinced that he had indeed found the true labyrinth. However, the most significant breakthrough came with the work of William Flinders Petrie, the famous British Egyptologist. In 1888, Petrie went to Hawara, determined to finally solve the riddle of the labyrinth's fate. By then, the site presented a confusing mix of debris, mud brick walls from later villages, scattered stones, and a canal that had been cut through the area in medieval times. However, as Petrie methodically cleared and surveyed the terrain, he quickly realized that the brick buildings noted by Lepsius were not the labyrinth itself, but the remains of a later Greco-Roman settlement. Once he distinguished those later layers, Petrie focused on what lay beneath. Eventually, he hit a massive layer of limestone chips and rubble, the telltale sign of large-scale stone quarrying. Amid this great bed of chips, as he described it, Petrie uncovered portions of an enormous stone foundation or platform. Measuring it out, Petrie found the foundations were nearly 1,000 by 800 feet, truly gigantic. What's more, these dimensions matched astonishingly well with the size implied by Herodotus's description. Petrie had essentially found the footprint of the labyrinth. What Petrie did not find, however, were intact walls or halls. The labyrinth's superstructure was gone, seemingly dismantled in antiquity. Therefore, he concluded the ancient Egyptians, or later rulers, had quarried away the labyrinth stones long ago. And thus, by 1889, Petrie thought he had pieced together the story. The labyrinth of Hawara had been real, and he had mapped its vast foundations. However, time and human hands had robbed it of its glory, leaving only traces for archaeologists to puzzle over. His findings were published and widely shaped the modern view that Hawara's labyrinth, while once extraordinary, was effectively lost to history, reduced to a stone outline and scattered fragments. But the story does not stop there, because in recent decades, new technology has begun uncovering one of the greatest secrets in history. You know, when I'm researching these videos, I run into the same problems over and over. Information overload, clickbait headlines, and honestly, not even knowing what to trust. It's tough, and as every media outlet is chasing clicks, it's only getting worse. Well, that's exactly why I use today's sponsor, Ground News, a news comparison platform that aggregates thousands of local and international news outlets all in one place. Take this story about the recent discoveries beneath the Giza pyramids. I get coverage details. Instantly, I can see how many outlets are covering the story. I can compare headlines. Ground News lets you put headlines from left-leaning, center, and right-leaning sources side by side. And there's the blind spot feature. It shows me which stories are being covered disproportionately, so I don't miss out on what's important. It lets me make up my own mind, which honestly is invaluable when researching history. So if you want to do the same, subscribe today using my link and get 40% off the unlimited access Vantage plan. Just scan this QR code on screen or go to ground.news/button. The link's in my description. Now, back to the video. For most of the 20th century, Petrie's conclusions went unquestioned. The Great Labyrinth was gone, demolished in antiquity. However, in the early 21st century, a new generation of researchers began to wonder if more of the labyrinth might still exist. In 2008, an ambitious project called the Matterhorn Expedition set out to re-explore Hawara using modern technology. This team was spearheaded by a Belgian researcher named Louis de Cordier and included scientists from the Egyptian National Research Institute of Astronomy and Geophysics. Crucially, they had permission from Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities, at that time led by Dr. Zahi Hawass, to conduct a non-invasive survey. Their plan was to use ground-penetrating radar and other geophysical tools to peer underground for any structural remains of the labyrinth. And what the Matterhorn expedition reported was nothing short of astonishing. After scanning the area south of the pyramid, exactly where Petrie had marked the foundations, the team detected clear evidence of man-made features deep under the ground. They saw patterns in the subsurface readings that looked like walls, chambers, and cavities, arranged in a regular grid-like layout. In other words, the radar was painting a picture of an enormous geometric structure buried 8 to 12 meters down, matching the labyrinth's expected footprint. The scan data revealed what appeared to be rows of large rooms and stone walls, some areas forming a massive rectangular grid. At roughly 10 meters deep, they identified something that could even be a continuous floor or a roof, possibly the very slabs that Petrie touched, with open space beneath them. The researchers noted that the material gave a signature similar to dense stone, perhaps granite, suggesting the labyrinth's deeper levels might still be intact and filled with heavy stone elements. In essence, the 2008 radar survey hinted that Petrie had only scratched the surface, What he thought was a foundation might actually have been a roof of the labyrinth's lower level, with entire corridors and rooms still sealed below. This discovery, if confirmed, would vindicate the ancient writer's claims that much of this labyrinth was underground. Herodotus was told of extensive subterranean chambers. Could those still lie undisturbed? Well, the Matterhorn team certainly believes so. However, this is where the story takes a puzzling turn. Despite the successful survey, the expedition's work was never followed by an official excavation or even a formal publication from the Egyptian authorities. According to Louis de Cordier, the Supreme Council of Antiquities in Egypt abruptly sealed off communication about the Hawara findings. Zahi Hawass, then Egypt's antiquities chief, reportedly forbade the team from making further public announcements until the data could be approved through official channels. For 2 years, the researchers waited for the green light that never came. Feeling stonewalled, de Cordier eventually took matters into his own hands. In 2010, he created a website to share the results and raise awareness of the labyrinth. This unilateral move, however, allegedly landed him on the wrong side of Hawass. By de Cordier's account, the authorities viewed the public release of unapproved geophysical data as a breach of protocol, possibly even a national security issue. The end result was that no further on-site work was permitted for his team. In essence, the remarkable discovery was left in limbo, tantalizing but unconfirmed, and now mired in a cloud of controversy. That must have been so frustrating. Imagine thinking you finally had proof that you'd found the lost elusive labyrinth of ancient Egypt, only to have disclosure blocked by one Zahi Hawass. However, as the 2008 GPR results sat waiting, other researchers began harnessing new technology to probe Hawara. A UK-based remote sensing company called Merlin Burrows teamed up with Tim Akers, a satellite imaging specialist formerly of the UK military, to apply advanced satellite scanning techniques at the site. Starting around 2015, Akers began analysing high-resolution multispectral satellite data of the Hawara region. And what Akers and Merlin Burrows reported is extraordinary. The scans revealed complex subsurface anomalies across the entire labyrinth area. According to their analysis, the labyrinth complex extends across 4 or 5 distinct underground levels, essentially multiple stacked layers of structure beneath the desert floor. Each level appeared to be separated by many meters of sand or rock, almost like an ancient multi-story building. The imagery showed regular patterns that Akers interpreted as colonnaded halls and chambers, some very large in scale. In total, the footprint of these features was gigantic, equivalent to about 10 football fields placed side by side. If accurate, that fits well with Petrie's measured foundation and confirms the immense size described by the classical authors. However, one particular finding from the satellite scan truly captured attention. At the center of the buried complex, Akers identified a massive anomalous object, unlike anything anyone expected. This object is about 40 meters long and gave off a strong metallic signature in the analysis, as if a huge metal artifact or structure is lying in one of the chambers. To the radar-trained eye, it didn't match the signal of natural rock or typical masonry. Tim Akers nicknamed this mysterious object Dippy, after the famous skeleton in the Natural History Museum in London, noting that in different renderings it looked somewhat like a giant tic-tac shaped capsule, or perhaps a large Shen ring. He confessed that nothing in his extensive experience scanning underground installations could quite compare to this. If the data is correct, this potentially metallic mass has no known precedent in ancient architecture. Now hold on a second. A massive, possibly metallic, tic-tac shaped object that's been buried underground for thousands of years. That is a rather extraordinary claim. The Merlin Burrows scans also provided encouraging news regarding a major concern at Hawara: water damage. The data suggested that while the upper few meters of the site are waterlogged, the deeper levels remain dry and preserved. The chambers detected, including whatever Dippy is, were in hollow, dry spaces beneath the water table. In other words, if the labyrinth's lower galleries are intact, they might have been protected by the bedrock and sealed from water intrusion all this time. This is a crucial point because it means there is a chance that inscriptions, sculptures, or other delicate objects could still survive in those sealed corridors, untouched since antiquity. Of course, these sensational claims from satellite scanning have yet to be verified on the ground. As exciting as they sound, archaeologists should approach them with cautious optimism. Remote sensing can sometimes produce false positives or be misread. I mean, the idea of 5 layered levels stretching dozens of meters down is completely unprecedented in Egyptian construction. And as for the dippy tic-tac object, well, your guess is as good as mine. So basically, we have to be careful. However, in my view, the evidence strongly suggests that something remarkable still lies under the sands of Hawara. The convergence of ancient testimony, Petrie's measured remains, and modern scans all point to the same conclusion. The labyrinth wasn't a legend, it was real, and it's very likely not completely gone. Thus, I believe the Hawara site deserves a dedicated future excavation, a carefully planned project using all the modern tools at our disposal. The challenges are real, controlling the water and perhaps diverting that irrigation canal in the area. But these are engineering problems that can be solved if the will and the funding is there. And the payoff could be tremendous, not just in treasures but in knowledge. At minimum, confirming the layout of the labyrinth would fill a huge gap in Egyptian architectural history. At most, possibly the most important archaeological discovery of our lifetimes. I, for one, cannot wait for what truth awaits beneath the shadows of Hawara. But the search continues, and perhaps soon, the labyrinth will no longer be lost. Thanks so much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like, leaving a comment down below, or subscribing to my channel. See you next time.